My brother always took credit for my ideas. At dinner, he repeated my story like it was his. I let him. But this time, I brought proof photos, receipts, dates. I laid them on the table without a word. The room went quiet. For once, no one clapped for him. It started small, as most wounds do. A pinprick you barely notice until it festers. My brother, Ethan, and I were born just 18 months apart, close enough to share the same orbit. Same friends, same toys, same small-town world. I was the thinker, always tucked into a corner with a puzzle or a book, piecing together ideas like they were Lego bricks. Ethan was the talker, all charisma and wide grins, the kind of kid who could charm a teacher into forgetting he hadn't done his homework. Together, we were a unit, but not an equal one. I built the castles, he waved from the turrets. When we were 8 and 10, I spent a whole summer trying to fix our busted GameCube. It was our only escape in a house where the TV was always on and our parents were always tired. I'd sit cross-legged on the carpet, screwdriver in hand, surrounded by wires and YouTube tutorials on our clunky old laptop. Ethan would hover, asking questions, eating Doritos, and offering half-baked suggestions. When I finally got the thing working, after weeks of trial and error, he ran to Mom and Dad, shouting, "I fixed it! It's working again!" They clapped, beamed. "Ethan, you're a genius," Mom said, ruffling his hair. Dad tossed him a high five. I stood in the doorway, holding the screwdriver, my hands smudged with dust from the console's insides. Ethan glanced at me, just for a second, and I saw it. A flicker of something. Not guilt, not exactly. More like he knew I wouldn't say anything. And I didn't, because it was small, because he was my brother, because I loved him, and love makes you forgive things you shouldn't. But small things grow roots. By middle school, it wasn't just the GameCube. I'd come up with ideas for our group projects, ways to make a poster stand out or a science fair model actually work, and Ethan would present them. He'd stand in front of the class, his voice carrying like he'd rehearsed it, while I sat at the back, doodling in my notebook. Teachers praised him. Classmates high-fived him. I'd get a nod, maybe, as the helper. I told myself it didn't matter. Ideas were cheap, right? Execution was what counted. Except Ethan wasn't executing. He was just claiming. High school made it worse. I was the one staying up late, crunching numbers for the Environmental Club's fundraiser or sketching out plans for the senior class trip to DC. Ethan wasn't in the group chats. Didn't show up to the meetings, didn't care about the details. But when it came time to pitch the idea to the principal or the PDA, there he was, all smiles, telling the story like he'd bled for it. "We raised $5,000, he'd say, and the room would erupt. I'd stand there, holding the spreadsheet I'd made at 3 a.m., and nod along. Why didn't I say anything? I ask myself that now. Maybe I was shy. Maybe I hated conflict. Maybe I thought it was easier to let him shine than to dim his light by claiming mine. Or maybe I just didn't know how to fight for myself yet. By college, Ethan had turned it into an art form. He didn't just take my ideas, he took my stories. The funny ones, the personal ones, the moments that shaped me. He'd retell them at parties, swapping my name for his, tweaking details to fit his charm. Like the time I got lost on a camping trip and ended up befriending a park ranger who taught me how to read a map by starlight. Ethan told it at a frat party, claiming he was the one stumbling through the woods, charming the ranger with his wit. People laughed, clinked their beers, posted about it on Instagram. Ethan's stories are unreal. I'd hear about it later. Friends would tag me in comments, "Your brother's hilarious." And I'd smile, tight-lipped, because what else could I do? Call him out in front of everyone? Ruin the vibe? I wasn't that person. Not yet. But it wore on me. Each stolen story felt like a brick added to a wall I hadn't meant to build. I started keeping things to myself, not just ideas, but parts of who I was. I stopped sharing the funny stuff, the creative stuff, the stuff that made me me. I told myself it was safer that way. If Ethan didn't know, he couldn't steal. Then came the project. It started in my sophomore year of college. A quiet idea I'd been turning over in my head for months. It was a concept for a small app, nothing world-changing, but something that could help people in my town organize community events more easily. I'd grown up watching local festivals and fundraisers fall apart because of bad communication, and I thought, why not make something simple to fix that? I spent nights researching, sketching wireframes, teaching myself basic coding. By my senior year, I'd built a rough prototype. I filed for a small business grant, registered a domain, even launched a bare-bones version online. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I poured myself into it. My time, my savings, my hope. I didn't tell Ethan. Not a word. But I made the mistake of posting a vague update on Instagram. A photo of my laptop, a coffee cup, and the caption, "Feeling proud of myself today. Big things coming." 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Ethan. "Hey, what's this about?" he asked, his voice all casual enthusiasm. I deflected, kept it vague. He didn't push, but he steered the conversation to our ideas, how we always bounce stuff off each other. I felt that old sting sharper now. He wasn't asking to celebrate me, he was fishing. I should have known what was coming. It was a family dinner, one of those loud, chaotic ones where everyone's talking over each other, passing mashed potatoes and wine. Ethan was in his element, holding court, telling stories about his new job, his new apartment, his new life. Everyone hung on his words. Mom was glowing, Dad was nodding, our aunts were laughing. I sat across from him, picking at my plate, trying to enjoy the moment. Then he stood up, glass in hand, and started talking about his new idea. It was my app, my concept, my months of late nights and early mornings, distilled into a 5-minute speech. He didn't just describe the idea, he told the story behind it, the inspiration I'd written about in my launch post. He used my words, my phrasing, even my reasoning about why it mattered. He added a few flourishes, some fake struggles to make it sound like he'd toiled over it, but it was mine through and through. The table erupted. Claps, cheers, toasts. Mom wiped a tear from her eye. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan," she said. Dad raised his glass. "To my brilliant son." I felt like I was sinking into the floor. My hands shook under the table. I wanted to scream, to throw my plate, to do anything but sit there. But I didn't. I just stared at my fork, counting the tines, trying not to throw up. That night I didn't sleep. Not out of anger, though there was plenty of that. Not even out of hurt, though that was there too. It was the weight of it all, years of letting him take pieces of me, years of staying quiet because it was easier, years of believing my voice didn't matter. I wasn't mad at Ethan, not really. I was mad at myself. So I made a plan. I went through everything. Every email I'd sent about the project, every draft I'd saved, every receipt for the domain registration and the software I'd bought. I found sketches from 2019, scribbled in a notebook during a boring lecture. I pulled screenshots of my code, timestamps on my Google Drive, even a photo of me working on it at a coffee shop, dated months before Ethan's inspiration. I printed it all, organized it into a folder, made copies. I wasn't building a case to destroy him. I just wanted the truth to exist outside my own head. The next family dinner was a month later, for Aunt Linda's birthday. The house was packed. Parents, cousins, family friends, even some neighbors. Ethan was in top form, fresh off a promotion at his job, basking in the attention. Everyone wanted to hear about his life, his plans, his next big thing. And then he did it again. He stood up, same confident smile, same glass in hand. He started telling the story of his app, Polish Now, with new details to make it sound like he'd been working on it for years. He talked about the vision he'd had, the struggles he'd faced, the community he wanted to help. It was my story, but smoother, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. The table started to clap. I felt that knot in my stomach again. But this time, it was different. This time I was ready. I stood up, didn't say a word, didn't need to. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I placed it on the table right in the center and started laying out the evidence. Photos of my laptop screen showing the app's early drafts. Receipts for the domain I'd bought. Emails to collaborators, dated years ago. My notebook, open to a page of sketches from 2019, with my handwriting and my name. The room went quiet. Not a gradual hush, but a sudden, heavy silence, like someone had flipped a switch. Ethan froze, his glass still raised. His smile stuck like a bad actor's. My cousin picked up one of the pages, her eyes scanning it. My dad leaned forward, squinting at a receipt. Mom blinked, her hand still holding a napkin to her mouth. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The truth was there, spread out like a hand of cards, undeniable. Ethan tried to laugh it off. We must have come up with it together, he said, his voice thinner than usual. No one responded. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. For the first time, no one clapped. Later, in the kitchen, he cornered me. His face was red, his voice low. "Why'd you have to embarrass me like that?" he asked. No apology, no acknowledgement, just wounded pride. I handed him one last sheet, the first draft of the idea dated 4 years ago in my handwriting. My name at the top. He stared at it, then at me, and for a moment I thought he might say something real. But he just shook his head and walked away. I went home and slept better than I had in years. Things have changed since that night. Ethan and I still talk, but it's different now, surface level, cautious, like we're both stepping around broken glass. Holidays are polite, texts are brief. He doesn't tell my stories anymore, and I don't give him the chance to. The spotlight doesn't find him as easily now. People ask questions, check details, look at me a little longer when he speaks. I've changed too. I don't shrink anymore. I don't let my ideas sit in the background, waiting for someone else to claim them. I speak up. Not loudly, not angrily, but clearly. The app is growing now, slowly but steadily, and every milestone feels like a brick I've laid myself. Sometimes proving your worth isn't about shouting louder or fighting harder. Sometimes it's about laying the truth on the table and letting the silence do the rest. That night, I didn't just take back my story. I took back my voice, and I'm never letting it go again.